Hey listeners, I want to tell you about the 34th PASA Sustainable Agriculture Conference happening February 5th through 7th in Lancaster, PA. You can register at pasafarming.org/HRN. That's PASA farming.org/HRN. This conference draws a diverse group of rural and urban farmers, educators, advocates, entrepreneurs, community groups, artisans, researchers, policymakers, home cooks and gardeners, youth, and others for 3 days of learning on sustainable agriculture and food systems topics. I went last year and I had a blast and I learned so much. So don't miss more than 80 educational sessions and an expansive trade show. Again, you can learn more and register at pasafarming.org/HRN.
This episode is brought to you by Wisconsin Cheese. We've been making cheese in Wisconsin since before we were even a state, which may be one reason why we win so many awards for it. It's what happens when a whole state dreams in cheese. Find your next favorite cheese at wisconsincheese.com.
You're listening to Heritage Radio Network.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cutting the Curd on the Heritage Radio Network. I'm your host, Kara Warren, and on today's episode, we have Nathan Aldridge, a cheese education and team member enrichment manager with GFI's Institut du Fromage. He's also a CCP and a CCSE. Plus, because this is like our recap episode and looking forward for 2025, everything, we also have Jessica Kesselman and Joe Salonia here to help. Hey guys, hey everyone, excited to talk cheese on this one?
Absolutely.
Hey, it's good to be back.
Good to be in one place.
I know we had a little bit of a break there, and I'm so excited to have everyone here to kind of break down all the cool things that, you know, we've started researching and kind of diving into. But I kind of want to just like give the listeners a sec to know Nathan a little better. Nathan, I've known you for a little while now.
Correct.
And I just wanted to ask you, it's fun. It's fun. We go back. And I just really wanted to know, what does it mean for you to be a cheese education and enrichment manager for the Institut du Fromage?
First, thank you for having me. It is great to be here and to talk about cheese, but it's wonderful. I am in a unique position and role within my company that allows me to basically share the cheese gospel with many, many people. I go train a lot of major retailers, independent retailers, chefs. I go down to Epcot sometimes and work with their chefs, and then I go to some mid-level retailer and train their cheesemongers. So one thing I do is try to not just educate, but to motivate people, to really open the door for people to help them learn how to enjoy cheese and really kind of bring their passion out. So for me, it's a huge honor. Like, I get to travel a great deal and be live with people, which is important for me. People who don't know me may learn after this, but I really love attention. So it's good to get up and have an audience and really, converse over something that we all have in common, which is eating food. So it's a real pleasure for me.
And the Institut du Fromage, is it something that you started? I feel like GFI modeled this amazing educational resource like once you arrived. Like I hadn't seen this before, and I feel like you're like the magnet for everyone for this cheese education program. So was it started by you?
It was not started.
Can you give us a little background on the Institute?
Absolutely. It was not started by me. It was started by a gentleman by the name of Michael Landis, who I want to say it's probably, it's probably been about 15 to 20 years ago. But I remember Michael actually attended one of my red jacket trainings that I did for Murray's Cheese. I think I was in Rome, Georgia. So I did help Murray's develop their red jacket training program. And I feel like a lot of things that I was able to share with him. And of course, he knew a lot more about wine pairings and everything than I ever could. But as far as really tying in the aspect of customer service and product knowledge and shop operations, that's something that I brought to the Institut du Fromage. So we went from being, of course, still a great training and getting people prepared for their CCP, but I had the unique experience of being a cheesemonger. Of course, in Murray's, having an independent store, which back then was a mom and pop, and I helped them develop the Murray's Cheese program that rolled throughout Kroger. So with that, developing trainings, I brought that into the fold and kind of, I want to say, taking it to the next step. He created a great foundation, and I'm trying to do what I can to grow it, basically.
That's fantastic. I really think it's a game changer for, especially, when there's a GFI show going on at the same time, you can check out new products and get an education from you. And it's like, wow, that's a really cool resource, I have to say, for everyone. Thank you again for being here, Nathan. I think now we should definitely start looking at the year in review of 2024. Jess, I'm going to throw it to you first. Were there any standout moments that you think defined 2024?
It's been a long month. I can't remember 2024. So
That's fair.
know, at least for me, it was a lot of, for me, the standouts was a lot of the emergence of new voices in some of the more established cheese institutions, including Cutting the Curd. I loved the episodes we had that talked more about cheeses from other cheesemaking communities, other traditions, and just hearing more voices. And it was the efforts of, like the Cheese Culture Coalition and just seeing all these, like Navarro cheese at ACS. So for me, that was really a standout for 2024. And I'm just curious to see how it moves forward in 2025.
I hear that. I mean, the Navarro cheeses I'm hoping to book for this season. So, good one on that, Jess. I agree. Nathan, was there anything for you that really stood out for 2024?
Yeah, and this may sound a little odd, but it was TikTok. I got on TikTok, to kind of see what was out there with the young people, and what I found was of course, the charcuterie board revolution. And I know in the fact that, number one, I don't want to be that jerk that has to say this, but charcuterie is cured meat. You cannot have a charcuterie board without, charcuterie on it. If you have a plate of candy, it's not a candy charcuterie board. It's a candy plate. But the fact that so many people now are trying, right? So many people now are trying cheese, and the art of having a sampling platter of cheese for gatherings is becoming so much more popular. I feel like 2024 kind of drove that in, if not kind of driving it into the ground. I hope it didn't. But yeah, TikTok and cheese boards, it's on.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. In a lot of different sectors. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so we all agree. Nathan, well done. The charcuterie board, that is a cheese board.
I could go on. I get on a soapbox quite often in my teachings and trainings where I go. That's we can't have a vegetable charcuterie board. That's called a crudité platter. There's already a name for it. But but people are so into it, and now that gives us a new audience.
Yeah.
For more cheese, and I think that's a win, regardless.
Glad you mentioned that.
I agree. No, I agree. It's definitely a trend to watch. Joe, you were at Fancy Food. We were just talking about this before we started rolling the show. Was there any trends that really caught your attention while you were there this year?
I couldn't spot any real trend and common denominator. I feel like when I'm at Fancy Food, I feel like I'm catching up a little bit just to see people and spot some strong things that might impress me. I was just in back-to-back meetings walking the show. But I did, it's just silly. It's going to sound silly. By the way, Nathan, it's great having you here, by the way, Nathan. You're a great personality in person, but I love I could hear you read the phone book, I think. I'm enjoying your voice here. But I mean, really, but I'm not on TikTok, so I don't I don't know what that's about. But I did. This is going to sound silly, but they re-released the Reggie candy bars from the 70s. Now it's not a trend, but it is something that I went home with and had another bonding moment to tell my dad about. So that was really great. But that's only if you're a Yankee fan and you remember what it was like.
And of a certain age, yes.
And of a certain age, and I came this close to meeting Reggie, but
it's lost on me. I'm actually like, what is that?
Yeah, but I did get to visit.
I grew up with those. Yeah.
I did get to visit Manuel, who is the importer of the Portuguese cheese. He imports a bunch of Portuguese cheeses, including he was on stage at the World Cheese Awards. And I just tasted again his membrillo and his fig paste, and they were just like ethereal. They were super delicious examples of that kind of condiment, and it just made me think, like, how much I miss things outside Switzerland sometimes. And if you're going to ask me what my standout moment was, selfishly and humbly, it will, for me, I'm still riding the moment where I got to be on the stage representing Michael Speaker and Gormino for the World Cheese Championship contest for Hornbacher. So it's that's something that I'm carrying with me. But trend wise, I did notice a lot of flavored cheeses, but maybe it's just because I'm noticing it and I don't get to eat them often. And heck, we even came out with one this year. It exists in one of our dairies, but we're reshaping it and marketing it differently. But it seems like there's cheese with inclusions is becoming a little more mid-level, I'd say, than maybe it was more in a gimmicky way. It's more taken more serious maybe now, than it was years ago. And I don't know how you shape that into one trend, but that's something I'm noticing.
I feel like we've had the flavored Goudas for a long time. I remember working with a Gouda producer. They were doing the chimichurri and the pesto, and then there was it just felt like every time you turned around there was another flavored Gouda, and they weren't even the first, right? I think like Nancy's Fancy or Yancey's Fancy. I don't even know which. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is it Nancy's?
Yes. Yeah. Yancey's for the Y.
Yancey's,
yeah.
Thank you. Yancey's Fancy.
A lot of flavors.
They've been doing the flavored Gouda thing for a long time. Is it that we're seeing the flavors moving beyond the Gouda and beyond the cheddar and now into other styles of cheese too? I feel like everywhere you turn, there's variations of flavor, of cheeses with flavors in it, and it's moved beyond the Gouda and cheddar pantheon. Is that what's happening, or is it just more Gouda producers are flavoring their Gouda?
I don't have an answer myself. I wonder, like I like to think, hopefully the cheesemakers and the companies making cheese are more in the driver's seat, setting the trend, but there's a public push of what sells, and that kind of steers maybe some big channels. But, I going back to even mentioning things like I think we were talking pre-show and standout moment for 2024 where we had the cheeses of Brazil, John Braga and others were on stage at the end of the ACS in Buffalo, made me wish and want that we could see more of those cheeses, emerge more. If there was put it under trend, put it under whatever, I'm more rooting for that kind of thing to take shape more and influence other cheese making philosophies, processes, landscapes, agriculture, than say the next. It's fun to throw an ingredient maybe into something and see what happens. Maybe that's what's going on with some companies. I could kind of have an eye on that. Sell as a cheese guy who sells. There's something to be said maybe about exploring a favorite flavor that might look cool or sound fun. But if you're, if most of your other selections can balance that out, then it might be a nice way to complement your range. I'm not. I like to think for me, I could tell you what I like and what weighs in, but I'm also from the perspective of a cheese sales guy, not so much a buyer. So.
Well, I think it's something that I've seen, or my opinion is, it's not, Jessica, that people are going past the Goudas and cheddars. Cheesemakers, I think we're getting better quality flavored cheeses. I think flavored cheeses in the past, of course, when I started out in the early 2000s and working with you all, like flavored cheeses like got a bad rap. It was like, oh well, if you put flavors in your cheese because your milk's not that good, and you got to cover up a flavor, or at least that was the attitude that seemed to be out there in the cheese world specifically. But now you look at it like cheese is what, 5 to 7, 10,000 years old, debatable. There's no way to really invent a new cheese. So I feel like a lot of cheesemakers, if you want to play around, whether you want to go from, a natural rind, wash rind, you can do things like that. But to really create something new now, you got to delve into new ingredients. And that's putting new flavors into cheese, trying something new, trying what works, or washing and rubbing cheese with something new. And something I think is more fun for me. I love flavored cheese. It's hot right now. It is what the public want. But now some cheesemakers are even, playing around with different cultures when making cheeses. And I think that's neat, where you have something like a cheddar style cheese with a Gruyere culture or things like that. And I feel like some of the cheesemakers aren't really hindered in a sense, but they can't create something new, but new flavors that brings something out there. And it may not be everything that I'm going to try, but if it brings more consumers into the cheese world, come on, bring it on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I super agree with that. Amen to that.
Excellent answer. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Right.
I think you're right. It is, we do talk about flavored cheeses, if we look backwards at the emergence of flavored cheese, you're right. I mean, the whole field of cheese has been elevated. So now to put in new flavors, it's not turned, our noses don't get like turned up to them like they used to, as looking at them as lesser quality. That's not it anymore. No, that's very interesting. And I love that about the cultures, because, the play on the word.
They try, and flavored cheeses, I think the fancy flavored cheeses was truffle. It's like, let's put truffle in everything. That's upscale. That's high quality. And like there's other things to float around. And I think somebody like, Point Reyes, I think they've done a good job with their tomas, and getting in something like the Rashi, so you're going in for you got to jump past, just like they do have an herb de Provence, which is great. They do have a truffle, but they're really trying to push it and trying to add new things, Middle Eastern flavors or Asian flavors that are coming in. And I think that's something that's new and that exposes, again, new flavors to a market who are hungry for something new.
Going back to what Joe was talking about with the experience of being exposed to cheeses from Brazil and Colombia and the way that they eat cheese, that is also something when we talk about like global flavors. I am still personally more interested in seeing more global cheeses represented in the market than necessarily the flavors. But I think that's going to start, like, where does that start? Does that start with smaller specialty shops that have access to these? Like, because it takes a while for them to get into the bigger guys, because they need a bigger market for them. But we know that a lot of those markets already exist in the United States. It's just the location of where those cheeses are or what kind of market they're in. I don't know. That's what I'm looking forward to, is seeing more styles of cheese from places with cheese-making traditions that we don't readily see in the United States.
Yeah, I think that there's still space to keep emphasizing, even though even the classics, along with new traditional cheese or cheese that have history in their pedigree, and the push and pull of the flavored cheese market is basically the antagonistic effort of that. So in somewhere the public will place their demand and either pool, and there's different consumers that may respond to either. But for me, my personal taste, I lean more towards the cheeses that have the history and discovery of people's and places and the things that they ate then. That means more to me than coming up with a clever flavor. Although I understand why companies would want to do the flavoring of the cheeses. So it's, for me, I like to try to strike a balance in how I discover food, and I hope that the cheese world, our whole collective community, doesn't double down on a trend like that, where it becomes a little we kind of lose our way. Hopefully all the great cheesemakers in our network will continue to make great cheese as the first priority, rather than deferring to the next flavor per se. Getting good milk and good craft is still hopefully the center of it all.
I can agree with that. And I think there is room for more cheeses from outside the United States, for more people to learn. So I agree with you. It is more interesting and quite honestly, probably a lot more flavor, without the flavoring. But I think there's room for that. And I think, again, that our, America in general, through social media and whatnot, is starting to get prepared and becoming more open to that.
Yeah.
And I think that's exciting.
But Nathan has access. You have access to so many products in your range. Do you know this? You were mentioning fermented ingredients. Is koji? I've tasted cured meats with koji in it, and maybe a dried fruit. That's I believe an extract from a Japanese method made with rice, where it imparts this really more of a deeper umami, and it also has a fermenting quality. Do you have products that have koji in it, and do you see any kind of trend in that direction, or because they usually, to me, taste wonderful? This company from Maine I know makes cured meats called Small Good. There may be others, but do you have anything like that in your range?
I think we're starting to look at more of that, because quite honestly, when dealing with a lot of major retailers, they're not as open to that right off the bat. But we're always looking for something with new flavors, and I think I'm definitely going to be the one to look out for it as new, because we get samples in all the time and doing tastings together, and I love to give my input. But I do, as a personal basis, I think that is on the rise. I think that's what people are looking for and that they're willing to try. So and I don't think that's going to be necessarily a trend per se, but sometimes we're going to be running into a shift where things happen, where, we've got the basics, we got the classics, which are great. But when you can alter meat and use different ingredients in that way for fermentation, that's a new make style. And I think that, and again, that's not a trend, that's something actually new. And hopefully we can, get some good stuff and help out producers and let that solidify and grow.
Right on.
Cool. All right, guys. I think we should this was a good one. Let's take a quick break on everything, and we'll just tell the listeners, hey, everyone, you're listening to Cutting the Curd, and we'll be right back.
This episode is brought to you by Wisconsin Cheese. There's a reason when you think of Wisconsin, you think cheese. Cheese is a huge part of Wisconsin's history and future. In Wisconsin, the state of cheese, the tradition of cheese-making excellence began 180 years ago, before Wisconsin was recognized as a state. Immigrants traveled to settle in this lush green hills of Wisconsin, bringing their cheese-making traditions with them. These storied skills, combined with the freshest milk available, created a cheese-making culture that is uniquely Wisconsin. Wisconsin's 1,200 cheesemakers, many of whom are third and fourth generation, continue to pass on old world traditions while adopting modern innovations in cheese-making craftsmanship. Find your next favorite cheese at wisconsincheese.com.
All right, welcome back to Cutting the Curd. I'm your host, Kara Warren. I'm here with Nathan Aldridge. He is the cheese expert, connoisseur, educator of all cheeses around the world. We were just talking global flavors. We got Jessica and Joe here. We could talk about a few different things. I'm a little scared to talk about tariffs. I know it's something everyone's kind of whispering about if you're dealing with imported stuff. We could also just jump into emerging markets and talk about alternative markets. So I think because we only have a certain amount of time, I feel like, does anyone want to just skip to the alternative markets, or does anyone want to tackle tariffs? Joe, if you have a 2-minute thing on tariffs you want to throw down on, I'm happy to do it. But I know it's also
Yeah, I'll give my quick hot take is it doesn't matter if there's a tariff on bananas or wood, it's still not going to help us. That's the way I look at it. Just no tariff is good. And so I wince at the thought of it. I guess tariffs have existed through every decade. You can think about when there was the Roquefort tariff and things like that. real extreme, like one pinpointed thing, but like even if it's just something simple with a country that we might not rely on heavily for cheese, like if it is Colombia or some place like that, and flowers and bananas and mangoes go up in price, it's just going to affect everything. I mean, it's just, so I don't, I don't know. There's no silver bullet other than to just stay the course,
right,
and do good work, and try to, if anything, could force us to get more efficient and focused on our education piece and help people understand why it is they should want to support small producers of in agriculture and people who make food for their livelihood and put faces to names and bring all food to life. Because I come from a background where my family or whoever they would just expect raspberries to fall from the sky in February, and that's not the way it is, right? Understanding seasonality and that things actually have a channel. They don't just magically appear in a Target store in the fruit area. Like there's so many things that lead to getting the food in your hand. You just if you can watch a 2-minute video on just watching plants get planted in Southern California, it's mind-boggling the amount of work it takes just to plant like celery or something, and you just think about like something simple as celery, it's in so many of our foods, onions, so all this, there's so much traded these days, that it's fragile. It's a fragile market we're in. And so I'm just hoping that things are minimized and there's not a lot of drama, but signs are pointing that it could go the other way. So we have to just do our best and keep supporting the good work of the people that we represent.
Yeah, I mean, it's I'm curious if it's going to build an increase in the buying of domestic cheeses with it. I mean, I guess that's the strategy behind it, but I don't know. It's I mean, Nathan, yeah, what do you think?
It's tricky. This is where I think about this. This is what keeps me up at night. Because of course I need cheese in stores so I can keep a job about educating. But Joe was right on one end. We got to continue educating. We got to educate the consumer. But this could send a couple of things could happen. You could see before tariffs come down that you're going to have panic buying of European cheeses. So where instead of people hoarding toilet paper and paper towels and such, you could see some foodies going out there hoarding their Reggiano, making sure they have some. But it also could send people into the complete opposite, where if you're starting, you get sticker shock. The consumer, they move in mass and they move together. So they're going to buy a lot, or they're going to not buy nothing. And they're going to go to commodity cheeses. That's my fear. Is I don't want the tariffs to come in to where people think, well, everything's so expensive now, I can no longer afford to support local American cheeses. So therefore, I'm just going to buy commodity cheeses and just deal with it. And that's going to be up to people like us who are preaching the word out here to say, no, continue to support. That's what we're here for. You got to support your American producer and continue to buy cheese. Regardless, I agree completely. Tariffs are going to be a bad thing for our food market. And that's like Forrest Gump said, that's all I got to say about that.
Okay, good. We're gonna lean into another thing now, because I agree it's not a happy topic. I'm gonna throw this one over to Jess actually and ask her, because I feel like you're good at noticing non-traditional sales, and in terms of online marketplaces, subscription boxes, even the meal kit world. Do we see more of that happening, Jess? In your sales work, are you running more into that?
I personally am not. I think look, I am not a fan of meal kits. Because for me, it's not so much for me about the cheese or about the meal. It's the damage to our environment that surrounds that. So it's the extra packaging. Mm-hmm. It's everything being delivered by truck. It's the inefficiency of it as a system. Like, I'm not down with it. Interestingly, the the rise in the charcuterie cheese board, which, you know, we've been talking about this for like 4 years, this boom, even actually pre-COVID, when we started seeing the beautiful cheese boards that were being produced at shops and being posted online. You know, going back to something Nathan was talking about earlier, and just like how much the consumers love this cheese and charcuterie boards, that also became a huge segment of commerce. You have all these mail order, do-it-yourself charcuterie by numbers boxes. You know, there's like tons of them out there now. And, you know, it kind of like took the idea of the Cheese of the Month Club that a lot of stores did as another revenue stream, right? Like a value added kind of revenue stream for them. Now you know, there's Borderie, and, you know, there's so many, there's a bunch out there. And I think that's great. I just get really concerned about the amount of packaging and just, you know, the mail order in general. It's part of our convenience culture, like the rise of like Goldbelly. You can get anything you want made, you know, instead of traveling to another city and enjoying the experience of eating at some very well-known restaurant. Well, now you can go in Goldbelly and order whatever dish it is they're famous for, and it's going to arrive at your house. You know,
that's weird.
I'm kind of looking forward to, and maybe this is connected to the conversation we just had about tariffs. I'm looking forward to being turned on to cheeses at my farmer's market again. I want to connect with a cheesemonger again at local shops. Some, you know, I guess I'm just feeling a little overstimulated by our economy, our cheese economy. And I'm kind of looking forward to the smaller, more personable experience. So, I mean, a lot of that is just like my own personal feelings about where everything is headed. But I'm really looking for markets that use less waste. Whether that, and for me, a lot of that is the packaging and the carbon footprint. So I'm kind of looking at the old school markets. Like, let's go back to, I'm looking for like emerging markets and like that are like face to face, more local, more regional, and the like. Anyone else? I'm going to get off my soapbox now.
No, I agree. I agree with you. I think, you know, personally, I agree with you. What I've been seeing out there as far as, you know, selling, you know, being part of a larger warehouse and a larger distribution company is that sadly convenience is on fire. It is, and it's not going anywhere. People have learned that, you know, it's weird that you got different sets of people. Some people are going to be like us. We want to cook at home. We want to talk to cheesemongers. I don't order groceries. I go in and shop. I'm going to pick out my cheese. I'm going to pick out my steak. I'm going to pick out my vegetables. But some people don't want that. And as convenience starts to grow, people are they want the cheese board options that are already there. And yes, Jessica, it does take up more plastic. It does take up more packaging, but it's there. I think that's something that's less of a trend and something that where people can afford to do it, they're going to do it.
Mm-hmm. So it's funny that you say afford, because I almost feel like not having the packaging, having the actual experience of like having a cheesemonger come to your house and do a private tasting for you and 6 of your best friends, that's now the luxury, right? Like now the luxury is to be able to forego the convenience and have that elevated experience. So maybe that's the channel that I see emerging, because I know in my side hustles, there are more requests coming out for tailored experiences.
Yes.
Yeah, you know, totally.
And the travel is a lot of them. And maybe with tariffs, it becomes more tailored experiences within the United States and not necessarily always looking at a tailored experience being something happening in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe.
Yeah, I agree with everything you guys were touching on there. I see elevated experiences. For me personally, I'm looking to connect more with chefs or in people's homes to have them understand and see and discover fondue again. Just fondue, again, a little more Swiss leaning, but there's many genres of fondue. But fondue, I hope, becomes a growing season. It's not, the season is expanding into, more of the fall, more of the spring. And elevated versions of fondue have been what I've been practicing to do beyond the bread and the pickle. I've been doing even little composed plates where the fondue is napped on top, like a little pave of potato, a little lobster, and then a nappe of the fondue on top, almost like a lobster Newburg, for instance, as one example. You're eating it individually as opposed to dipping. But the fondue is still, a pot of fondue is made at least. I feel like things are going in a million directions. So it's like, what wave do you want to ride to shore that plays, maybe to your experience and where you can add value and also still discover and keep the relevant conversations around good practices going.
Yeah, that's oh man. Listen, I think we hit on a lot of really great points. I think that's the time for the show, guys. I know we could talk all day. I want to thank everyone for being on the show today.
Oh, wow.
Nathan, a special thank you to you. I know there were so many more questions. We're going to have to wait for another episode because we've timed out already. It's a bummer. But anyway, I just also want to make a small note before we say goodbye to everyone, to our listeners. I also want to, on a slightly sad note, want to mention and dedicate this episode to Boo Sims, a cheese entrepreneur who passed away recently. She, with her twin sister, Sarah, co-founded Lady and Larder, an LA-based cheese shop. She's a young woman. She, I believe in her late 30s, just passed away. So with that, I just wanted to share a toast that she wrote on her Instagram, which is, may we remember to wake up and dance, listen more, linger longer, make gratitude our aesthetic, go hard on the problem and soft on the person, pick up the phone, get our hands dirty, mail more letters, buy the hat, sing louder, surrender to the surprises, go slowly, follow what makes you feel, be amazed by it all. I think that's a note we can all take to heart. I'd like to thank you again, Nathan, for being on the show today. You can follow him at Traveling Cheesemonger or hashtag Institut de Fromage. Plus, you can follow us at Cutting the Curd and Heritage Radio at heritage_radio. And please listen and subscribe to Cutting the Curd wherever you listen to your podcast. Thanks, and eat more cheese. Cutting the Curd is powered by Simplecast. Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food radio supported by you. Keep in touch at heritageradionetwork.org/subscribe.